What happens when one of the most respected judges in entertainment history walks onto a morning talk show, expecting a friendly chat, only to face relentless attacks on live television? In just 49 seconds, a casual greeting would transform into the most shocking confrontation daytime TV has ever witnessed, leaving viewers absolutely speechless and one host scrambling to salvage her reputation. Simon Cowell arrived at the studio that morning with nothing but good intentions. He was there to talk about his latest project, to share some behind-the-scenes stories, and to connect with the audience who had supported him throughout his career. But from the moment he sat down on that couch, something felt off. The energy in the room was tense, uncomfortable even, and what should have been a straightforward interview was about to spiral into absolute chaos. Lorraine Kelly sat across from Simon with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Next to her were two regular panelists, journalist Amanda Harrison and television personality Marcus Webb, both of whom seemed to sense the strange atmosphere filling the studio. The cameras rolled, the audience settled into their seats, and Lorraine wasted no time launching into her first question. "So, Simon, let me ask you something," Lorraine began, her voice dripping with a tone that immediately put everyone on edge. "You've made a career out of crushing people's dreams on television. How does it feel knowing that millions of people tune in just to watch you be cruel?" The audience fell silent. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat, exchanging a quick glance with Amanda. Simon, ever composed, kept his expression neutral as he responded. "Well, that's certainly one way to start an interview," Simon said calmly. "I'd hardly call honesty cruelty, Lorraine. I've always believed in giving people the truth even when it's difficult to hear. That's not about crushing dreams, it's about respecting people enough to be real with them." Lorraine laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Oh, please, respect. You've humiliated countless contestants over the years. Tell me, does it make you feel powerful to tear people down in front of millions?" Amanda Harrison interjected, trying to diffuse the situation. "Lorraine, I think what Simon does is actually provide valuable feedback that—" "I'm sorry, Amanda, but I'm conducting this interview," Lorraine snapped, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Simon, I'm asking you a direct question. Do you enjoy making people feel small?" Simon's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. "I've never made anyone feel small. What I do is evaluate talent. That's what I was hired to do. If someone can't sing, telling them they're brilliant doesn't help them. It actually hurts them in the long run. So you're saying you're doing them a favor?" Lorraine pressed, leaning forward with an expression that could only be described as hostile. "By mocking them, by making them cry on national television." "I've never mocked anyone," Simon replied, his patience clearly wearing thin. "And if someone cries, it's usually because they're passionate about what they're doing. I respect that passion, Lorraine. I always have." Marcus Webb attempted to steer the conversation in a different direction. "Simon, why don't you tell us about your new project? I heard it's something quite exciting and—" "Marcus, please," Lorraine interrupted again, her voice sharp. "We'll get to that in a moment. Right now, I want to address the elephant in the room. Simon, you're known for your harsh criticism, your cutting remarks, your complete lack of empathy. Some might even call you a bully." The word hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. The audience gasped audibly. Amanda's mouth fell open in shock. Marcus looked down at his hands, clearly mortified by where this interview was heading. But Simon remained remarkably composed, though his eyes had grown noticeably colder. "A bully," Simon repeated slowly. "That's a serious accusation, Lorraine, and it's completely unfounded. I've spent my entire career helping people achieve their dreams, launching careers, giving opportunities to talented individuals who might never have been discovered otherwise. To sit here and call me a bully is not only insulting, it's wildly inaccurate." "Is it, though?" Lorraine challenged, her voice rising. "Because from where I'm sitting, you've built an empire on the backs of vulnerable people, people who came to you with hope and left with nothing but humiliation. That sounds like bullying to me." "Lorraine, I really think we should move on," Amanda said quietly, her discomfort palpable. "This line of questioning is—" "Amanda, if you interrupt me one more time, I'll have you removed from this panel," Lorraine snapped, not even looking at her colleague. The threat was shocking, completely unprofessional, and it sent a ripple of whispers through the studio. "Audience!" Amanda's face flushed red as she fell silent, clearly stunned by the public reprimand. Simon had seen enough. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You know what, Lorraine? I came here today as a guest on your show. I expected a professional interview, perhaps some light-hearted banter, maybe even some challenging questions. But what I didn't expect was to be ambushed with baseless accusations and personal attacks. Personal attacks? Lorraine scoffed. I'm simply asking you to account for your behavior. If you can't handle a few tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. Tough questions are fine, Simon replied, his voice growing firmer. But there's a difference between tough questions and outright hostility. You're not interested in having a conversation. You're interested in creating a spectacle. And frankly, I'm not going to sit here and be your entertainment. Marcus tried once more to salvage the situation. Look, perhaps we'll need to take a breath here. Simon, Lorraine, let's just stay out of this, Marcus. Lorraine commanded, silencing him instantly. She turned her attention back to Simon, her expression hardening. You think you can just walk into my studio and dictate how this interview goes? This is my show, Simon, mine, and I'll ask whatever questions I want. Your show? Simon raised an eyebrow. Yes, it's your show. Which means the way you're conducting yourself right now reflects entirely on you. And trust me, Lorraine, you're not coming across well. The comment struck a nerve. Lorraine's face flushed with anger. Excuse me? How dare you sit there and tell me how I'm coming across? You of all people lecturing me about behavior. That's rich. I'm not lecturing anyone, Simon said evenly. I'm simply stating a fact. You invited me here as a guest, and instead of treating me with basic courtesy, you've spent the entire time attacking me. Your panelists have tried to intervene. Your audience is clearly uncomfortable, and you're sophocist on whatever vendetta you have against me that you can't see how inappropriate this has become. Amanda found her voice again, speaking carefully. Simon has a point, Lorraine. Perhaps we could. I don't recall asking for your opinion, Amanda. Lorraine shot back viciously. In fact, I'm starting to wonder why you're even on this panel if all you're going to do is defend the guest instead of supporting me. The words were like a slap. Amanda's eyes widened, hurt flashing across her face. Marcus reached over and placed a comforting hand on her arm, shaking his head slightly as if to tell her not to engage further. The entire studio had gone deathly quiet, everyone watching in disbelief as the situation continued to deteriorate. Simon stood up slowly, removing his microphone with deliberate movements. I think we're done here. Sit down, Lorraine demanded, her voice taking on an edge of desperation as she realized she was losing control. We're in the middle of an interview. You can't just leave. Actually, I can, Simon replied calmly. And I am. This isn't an interview, Lorraine. It's an interrogation, and I have no interest in being treated this way, especially not in live television. Lorraine's composure cracked completely. She jumped to her feet, pointing an accusatory finger at Simon. You arrogant, self-important man. You think you can just walk away when things don't go your way? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't dish it out, but you can't take it. I can take criticism just fine, Simon said, his voice deadly calm. What I won't take is disrespect. There's a difference, and clearly you don't understand that. Get out then, Lorraine practically shouted, her professionalism completely abandoned. If you can't handle a real conversation, then leave. Go back to your protected little bubble where everyone tells you how wonderful you are. Protected bubble? Simon let out a short laugh. Lorraine, I've faced more criticism in my career than you could possibly imagine. The difference is I've always conducted myself with dignity, something you're clearly incapable of. Marcus stood up now, positioning himself between Simon and Lorraine as if physically trying to separate the conflict. Please, both of you, let's just calm down. We can end this civilly. Simon, thank you for coming. Lorraine, perhaps we should go to a commercial break. Don't tell me what to do, Marcus, Lorraine snarled, her attention still fixed on Simon. He started this by refusing to answer my questions honestly. I answered every question you asked, Simon countered, heading toward the exit. You just didn't like the answers. And for the record, Lorraine, the way you've treated your own colleagues today says far more about your character than anything I could ever say. What's that supposed to mean? Lorraine demanded, following him a few steps. Simon paused, turning back to face her one final time. It means you've humiliated Amanda in front of your entire audience. You've silenced Marcus every time you tried to bring some rationality to this conversation. You've turned what should have been a simple interview into a personal attack. And for what, ratings? Some misguided sense of righteousness? Whatever your reason, it's not worth destroying your own credibility. Amanda was visibly emotional now, tears forming in her eyes. Marcus had his arm around her shoulders, whispering something comforting. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to applaud or remain silent. Some crew members had stopped what they were doing, equally transfixed by the unfolding drama. Lorraine's face had gone from red to almost purple. How dare you come onto my show and criticize how I run things? You have no right. I've every right to call out unprofessional behavior when I see it, Simon interrupted, his voice cutting through her protests. And what I've witnessed here today is beyond unprofessional. It's cruel. It's petty. And it's beneath what this show is supposed to represent. You're calling me cruel. Lorraine's voice cracked slightly. That's hilarious coming from you. The difference, Lorraine, is that everything I've ever said to a contestant has been in the context of helping them improve or understand their abilities. What you've done today has no purpose other than to tear someone down. There's no constructive feedback here. No genuine inquiry. Just malice. Amanda spoke up again, her voice trembling. Lorraine, he's right. This has gone too far. We should apologize. And I'm not apologizing to anyone, Lorraine declared stubbornly, crossing her arms. Especially not to him. Simon shook his head, a look of genuine disappointment crossing his face. That's your choice, but you might want to consider apologizing to your colleagues at the very least. They didn't deserve to be treated this way either. With that, Simon turned and walked toward the studio exit, his posture straight and dignified despite the chaos erupting behind him. Several security personnel had appeared, unsure whether they should intervene or let him leave. The show's producer rushed onto the set, whispering urgently to Lorraine, who was now standing alone in the middle of the stage, watching her guest walk away. Fine, leave, Lorraine called after him, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and something that might have been panic. We don't need you anyway. The show was doing just fine before you got there. Simon didn't respond. He didn't even turn around. He simply continued walking past the cameras, past the stunned crew members, past the gaping audience until he disappeared through the studio doors. The moment he was gone, the studio erupted into chaos. Audience members started talking all at once, their voices a cacophony of shock and confusion. The producer was gesturing frantically at the control booth, trying to signal for a commercial break. Amanda had broken down completely, crying into her hands while Marcus tried to comfort her, and Lorraine stood frozen in the center of it all, seemingly unable to process what had just happened. We're going to a break, the producer announced loudly, trying to regain control. Everyone stay calm. We'll be back in 5 minutes. But the damage was done. The cameras might have stopped rolling, but everyone in that studio knew they had just witnessed something unprecedented. Marcus finally stood up, helping Amanda to her feet. He looked at Lorraine with an expression of profound disappointment. That was completely out of line, Marcus said quietly but firmly. All of it. He was our guest and you treated him appallingly. But worse than that, you treated your own team with contempt. Amanda didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve that. And honestly, neither did Simon. Oh, not you too, Lorraine muttered, her bravado starting to crumble. I was just doing my job. Your job is to conduct interviews, not to launch personal attacks, Marcus replied. There's a reason people respect Simon, Lorraine. It's because despite his reputation for being blunt, he's always been fair. Can you say the same about what happened here today? Lorraine opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. For the first time since the interview began, she seemed at a loss. Amanda wiped her eyes and looked at Lorraine with a mixture of hurt and anger. You humiliated me in front of everyone, Amanda said, her voice barely above a whisper. I tried to help and you threatened to have me removed. Your own colleague. What were you thinking? I was trying to get him to be honest, Lorraine said weakly. But even she didn't sound convinced by her own explanation. He's always so controlled, so perfect. I wanted to break through that by attacking him, Marcus asked incredulously. By creating a hostile environment. That's not journalism, Lorraine. That's just cruelty. And he was right about one thing. It says a lot more about you than it does about him. The producer approached the group, his face grave. Lorraine, we need to talk. Offset now. As Lorraine was led away by the producer, Marcus and Amanda sat back down on the couch, both looking exhausted. The audience was still buzzing with conversation, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Some were taking out their phones, already typing furiously, no doubt sharing what they had seen with the outside world. I can't believe that just happened, Amanda said, shaking her head. I've never seen anything like that on live television. Neither have I, Marcus agreed. And I've been doing this for 20 years. That was beyond anything I've ever witnessed. Meanwhile, backstage, Simon was gathering his things from the dressing room. A production assistant approached him hesitantly, looking apologetic. Mr. Cowell, I'm so sorry about what happened out there. That was completely unacceptable. Is there anything we can do? Simon looked at the young woman and offered a small, tired smile. It's not your fault. You don't need to apologize. These things happened, but still, the way she spoke to you, the way she treated everyone, it was awful. It was uncomfortable, Simon agreed, picking up his jacket. But I've dealt with worse. The important thing is that your colleagues in there, Amanda and Marcus, they tried to do the right thing. Make sure they're okay. The production assistant nodded, impressed by his concern for others, even after being treated so poorly. I will. And again, I'm really sorry. You handled that with so much grace, Simon shrugged. Sometimes the best response to aggression is simply to walk away. No point in escalating something that's already out of control. Back on the set, the 5-minute break had stretched to 15 minutes as the production team scrambled to figure out what to do next. The audience was growing restless and the atmosphere remained charged with tension. When Lorraine finally returned to the stage, her demeanor had changed completely. Gone was the aggressive hostility, replaced by something that looked almost like defeat. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice lacking its usual confidence. We're going to continue with the show. Obviously, our planned interview has ended, so we'll be moving on to our next segment. But the murmurs from the audience made it clear that no one was interested in moving on. They had questions. They wanted explanations. They wanted to understand what they had just witnessed. Marcus and Amanda sat silently, both still visibly shaken by the entire ordeal. One brave audience member raised her hand. Are you going to address what just happened? Are you going to explain why you treated your guest that way? Lorraine's expression hardened slightly. I don't think that's necessary. What happened between Mr. Cowell and myself was simply a difference of opinion. Sometimes interviews get heated. That wasn't heated. Another audience member called out. That was hostile. You attacked him from the moment he sat down. I was asking difficult questions, Lorraine insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. That's what good journalists do. Marcus finally spoke up, his voice calm but firm. Lorraine, with all due respect, those weren't difficult questions. They were accusations disguised as questions. There's a difference. The audience erupted in applause, clearly agreeing with Marcus' assessment. Lorraine looked stunned, unable to believe that her own panelist was speaking against her so publicly. Amanda nodded in agreement with Marcus, her earlier hurt transforming into quiet resolve. I think we all saw what happened, Amanda added softly, and pretending it was just a normal interview that got a bit heated. Does a disservice to everyone who witnessed it, including those of us on this panel. Lorraine's face flushed again, but this time it seemed more from embarrassment than anger. She looked around at the audience, at her colleagues, at the crew members who were all watching her with expressions ranging from disappointment to disbelief. The reality of the situation was finally sinking in. Perhaps I could have handled things differently, she admitted reluctantly, the words seeming to physically pain her. But Simon Cowell has a reputation, and I thought it was important to dress that by ambushing him. An audience member shouted. By attacking your own colleagues when they tried to intervene? The questions kept coming, each one more pointed than the last, and Lorraine had no good answers. She tried to deflect, tried to justify, tried to move the conversation forward. But it was clear that the audience, her panelists, and likely the viewers at home were not going to let this go easily. The segment ended awkwardly, with Lorraine cutting to another commercial break earlier than planned. As soon as the cameras were off, she left the stage without a word to Marcus or Amanda, disappearing into her dressing room. The two remaining panelists sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything that had happened. That was the most uncomfortable hour of my professional life, Amanda said quietly. Mine too, Marcus agreed, and I don't think it's over yet. This is going to have consequences. He was right. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation were already spreading across social media. Viewers who had watched live were sharing their reactions, and the consensus was overwhelmingly critical of Lorraine's behavior. People were praising Simon for maintaining his composure, for defending himself without stooping to her level, and for ultimately choosing to walk away rather than engage in a pointless battle. The show limped through the rest of its scheduled segments, but the energy was completely gone. The audience remained subdued. Marcus and Amanda seemed checked out, and Lorraine's attempts to capture her usual cheerful persona fell completely flat. Everyone knew that what had happened that day would be remembered far longer than any other moment from the show. As the final credits rolled and the studio audience filed out, the conversations continued. People were already on their phones calling friends, posting on social media, discussing what they had witnessed. The consensus was clear. Simon Cowell had been treated unfairly. Lorraine Kelly had crossed a line, and the entire incident reflected poorly on her and her show. In the dressing room area, production staff whispered among themselves. Some expressed sympathy for Lorraine, suggesting she must have been having a bad day, but most agreed that, regardless of whatever personal issues she might be dealing with, her behavior had been unprofessional and unjustifiable. The way she had treated not just Simon, but her own colleagues had been shocking to witness. Amanda and Marcus gathered their things in silence, both emotionally drained from the experience. As they prepared to leave, Marcus turned to Amanda with a weary expression. "You know this is going to be everywhere tomorrow," he said. "I know," Amanda replied. "I just hope people understand that we tried. Really tried to make it better." "They will," Marcus assured her. "Anyone who watched could see that we were trying to salvage the situation. It's Lorraine who's going to face the criticism notice." And indeed, that's exactly what happened. The interview, if it could even be called that, became one of the most talked about moments in talk show history. Not because of anything particularly insightful that was said, not because of any revelations or surprises, but because it represented a complete breakdown of professional standards and basic courtesy. Viewers had witnessed a host attack a guest relentlessly silence her own colleagues, and ultimately drive someone from her stage through sheer hostility. Simon Cowell had walked onto that stage, expecting a typical interview. He had walked off with his dignity intact, having refused to engage in the circus that Lorraine had tried to create. He hadn't shouted, hadn't insulted, hadn't stooped to her level. He had simply stated his case, defended himself calmly, and made the decision that his time was worth more than continuing to participate in such a hostile environment. For Lorraine Kelly, the incident became a defining moment, but not in the way she might have hoped. Instead of creating a memorable interview moment or revealing some hidden truth about her guest, she had revealed something about herself. She'd shown that beneath the veneer of the friendly morning show host was someone capable of cruelty, pettiness, and a stunning lack of self-awareness. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. In trying to paint Simon Cowell as the villain, she had inadvertently cast herself in that role. In attempting to expose what she saw as his flaws, she had exposed her own. And in pushing for a confrontation that would make headlines, she had gotten exactly what she wanted. Just note in the way she had imagined.